The battle over former President Edgar Lungu's burial has now reached a new level, a dramatic international legal showdown. The Lungu family says they're being disrespected. The Zambian government insists it's doing the right thing. And the question remains, who controls the legacy of Edgar Lungu, the state or the family? The burial of former President Edgar Chagwa Lungu has erupted into a full-blown international court battle. The Lungu family, led by key PF figures and legal teams, is now challenging the Zambian government over funeral arrangements. Sources say South Africa is caught in the middle, and legal tensions are rising fast. In this exposé, InspirAfrica official reveals how the Lungu family took the battle international, what the Zambian government is demanding, what's really stopping Lungu's burial, how this drama is dividing Zambia at home and abroad. Stay informed and fearless. Subscribe now for bold Zambian political content. Introduction: The Edgar Lungu burial controversy. The death of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu has sparked an unprecedented legal and political drama that has transcended Zambia's borders, drawing international attention, particularly in South Africa. The dispute centers on the Lungu family's decision to bury the former president in Johannesburg, South Africa, against the Zambian government's insistence that he be laid to rest in Zambia. This conflict has unfolded in the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria, involving legal injunctions, emotional public reactions, and complex diplomatic considerations. The situation is further complicated by allegations of irregularities, such as Lungu's possible use of a Zimbabwean passport, and has ignited debates about national pride, sovereignty, and familial autonomy. Below, I address each of your questions in detail, drawing on available information from ex-posts and critical reasoning, while acknowledging the inconclusive nature of some claims. 1. How the Lungu family took the battle international. The Lungu family's decision to pursue burial arrangements for former President Edgar Lungu in Johannesburg, South Africa, rather than in Zambia, escalated what could have been a domestic matter into an international legal and diplomatic conflict. Several factors contributed to this internationalization. Decision to bury Lungu in South Africa. Edgar Lungu, Zambia's president from 2015 to 2021, reportedly passed away in a South African hospital. The Lungu family, led by former First Lady Esther Lungu and their children, opted to organize his burial in Johannesburg, where a prayer service was planned at a church in Hillbrow. This decision was not arbitrary, but appears rooted in personal or logistical considerations, though specific motivations remain speculative due to limited public statements from the family. Possible reasons include medical context. Lungu's hospitalization in South Africa suggests he may have been receiving treatment there, and the family might have chosen to conduct the burial where he passed, possibly for emotional or practical reasons, such as established connections or arrangements in Johannesburg. Family preferences. The Lungus may have personal ties to South Africa, including residency, property, or community connections, which made Johannesburg a preferred location. Political statement. Some speculate the choice could reflect strained relations with the Zambian government, particularly under President Hakainde Hichilema, prompting the family to avoid a state-managed burial in Zambia. Legal action in South Africa. The international dimension crystallized when the Zambian government filed an injunction in the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria to halt the burial scheduled for June 25, 2025. The Lungu family, including Esther Lungu, their children, and their lawyer Makibi Zulu, became respondents in this case. The family's decision to engage with South African legal processes, rather than repatriating Lungu's body to Zambia immediately, effectively internationalized the dispute. By responding to the injunction and participating in court proceedings, the Lungus ensured that South African authorities, not just Zambian ones, would play a pivotal role in determining the outcome. Allegations of a Zimbabwean passport. A particularly intriguing twist in this saga is the claim, reported in an ex-post, that Lungu may have used a Zimbabwean passport to check into the South African hospital. If true, this could have significant implications. Diplomatic complexity. The use of a foreign passport by a former head of state raises questions about citizenship, identity, and international law. It could complicate South Africa's handling of the case, as it might suggest Lungu was residing in South Africa under a different legal status. Zambian sovereignty concerns. For Zambia, this allegation could fuel arguments that Lungu's burial abroad undermines national pride, especially if he was perceived to have distanced himself from Zambian identity. Speculative nature. This claim remains unverified, and ex-posts alone are insufficient to confirm its validity. However, it has added fuel to the international narrative, drawing attention from neighboring countries and complicating the legal battle. Involvement of South African courts. The Gauteng High Court's decision to suspend the burial until July 18, 2025, pending a final determination on repatriation, underscores South Africa's role as a neutral arbiter. This legal intervention highlights how the Lungu family's choice to proceed in South Africa pulled the dispute into an international jurisdiction, forcing both parties to navigate foreign legal systems and diplomatic protocols. Broader international implications. The case has drawn attention beyond Zambia and South Africa, particularly in the Southern African Development Community (SADC) region. Neighboring countries, such as Zimbabwe, may be monitoring the situation due to the passport allegations and the precedent it sets for handling the remains of former heads of state. The international media, as evidenced by posts from outlets like SABC News, have amplified the story, framing it as a regional political drama with implications for Zambia's image abroad. In summary, the Lungu family internationalized the battle by choosing South Africa as the burial site, engaging with its legal system, and prompting a cross-border legal challenge from the Zambian government. This move has entangled South African courts, raised questions about Lungu's status in South Africa, and drawn regional attention, transforming a personal family decision into a high-stakes international controversy. 2. What the Zambian government is demanding. The Zambian government, led by President Hakainde Hichilema, has taken a firm stance against the Lungu family's plan to bury the former president in South Africa. Its demands are clear and rooted in national, cultural, and political considerations. Repatriation of Lungu's body. The government insists that Edgar Lungu, as a former head of state, must be buried in Zambia. This demand is based on national pride and tradition. In Zambia, as in many African nations, burying a former president on home soil is seen as a matter of national honor. Lungu's presidency, despite its controversies, places him among Zambia's historical figures, and the government argues that his burial in Zambia is essential to preserve his legacy and national unity. State funeral protocol. The government likely views Lungu's burial as an opportunity for a state funeral, which would allow official ceremonies, public mourning, and a demonstration of national cohesion. A burial abroad could undermine this process and be perceived as a rejection of Zambia's sovereignty over its former leader. Cultural norms. Zambian cultural practices often emphasize returning the deceased to their homeland for burial, particularly for prominent figures. The government's position aligns with these norms, framing the family's decision as contrary to tradition. Legal action to enforce repatriation. To enforce its demand, the Zambian government filed an injunction in the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria to stop the burial in Johannesburg. This legal action, reported on June 24, 2025, in X-Posts, names Esther Lungu, her children, and their lawyer as respondents. The government's legal strategy seeks to halt the burial. The immediate goal was to prevent the burial scheduled for June 25, 2025, which the court granted by suspending proceedings until July 18, 2025. Secure repatriation. The government is pushing for a final court ruling that would mandate the return of Lungu's body to Zambia for burial, arguing that this aligns with national interests and legal precedents for former heads of state. Engagement with the Lungu family. President Hichilema has publicly stated that his government attempted to engage with the Lungu family following Edgar Lungu's death, but was rebuffed. This claim, reported in an X-Post on June 24, 2025, suggests the government's demand includes a call for dialogue to resolve the issue amicably. However, the family's refusal to engage has led to the government's reliance on legal measures, indicating a breakdown in communication. Addressing alleged irregularities. The government's position may also be influenced by the unverified claim that Lungu used a Zimbabwean passport. If substantiated, this could be leveraged to argue that Lungu's burial abroad is inappropriate, as it might suggest he was operating outside Zambian legal or national frameworks at the time of his death. The government may demand clarity on this issue to bolster its case for repatriation. In essence, the Zambian government demands that Edgar Lungu's body be returned to Zambia for a state-sanctioned burial, reflecting national pride, cultural norms, and political considerations. Its legal action in South Africa underscores the seriousness of this demand, while its public statements highlight efforts to resolve the matter through dialogue, albeit unsuccessfully. 3. What's really stopping Lungu's burial? The suspension of Edgar Lungu's burial in Johannesburg is the result of a confluence of legal, political, and logistical factors, with the Gauteng High Court's ruling being the immediate barrier. Below are the key elements stopping the burial. Court injunction. The Gauteng High Court in Pretoria issued a ruling on June 25, 2025, halting the burial until July 18, 2025, pending a final determination on whether Lungu's body should be repatriated to Zambia. This injunction, agreed upon by both parties, as reported by SABC News, is the primary obstacle. The court's intervention was prompted by the Zambian government's application, which argued that the burial in South Africa violated national interests. The legal process requires both sides to present arguments, delaying any burial plans until a resolution is reached. Zambian government's opposition. The government's insistence on repatriation is a significant roadblock. By challenging the Lungu family's decision in court, the government has effectively paused the process, as the family cannot proceed without violating the court order. The government's stance is driven by the factors outlined above: national pride, cultural norms, and political strategy, which have turned the burial into a contested issue. Family's resistance. The Lungu family's determination to bury Edgar Lungu in South Africa has prolonged the standoff. Their refusal to engage with the Zambian government, as claimed by President Hichilema, and their decision to proceed with burial plans in Johannesburg suggest a deliberate choice to resist repatriation. This resistance may stem from personal grievances, distrust of the government, or logistical preferences, but it has kept the dispute unresolved. Allegations of passport irregularities. The unverified claim that Lungu used a Zimbabwean passport adds complexity. If South African authorities are investigating this allegation, it could delay proceedings further, as it raises questions about Lungu's legal status in South Africa at the time of his death. This issue may require additional documentation or diplomatic clarification, contributing to the delay. Logistical and emotional considerations. The logistics of organizing a burial, especially for a former head of state, are complex. The family's preparations in Johannesburg, including the planned prayer service in Hillbrow, indicate significant planning. Halting these arrangements has emotional and practical implications, potentially causing further delays as the family navigates the legal and emotional fallout. In summary, the burial is stopped by the Gauteng High Court's injunction, driven by the Zambian government's legal challenge, the Lungu family's resistance, potential passport irregularities, and the logistical complexities of reorganizing a high-profile burial. The court's final ruling will determine the next steps. 4. How this drama is dividing Zambia at home and abroad. The Edgar Lungu burial controversy has polarized Zambian society and its diaspora, highlighting deep-seated political, cultural, and social divides. The dispute has sparked debates about loyalty, national identity, and the legacy of Lungu's presidency, with ramifications both domestically and internationally. Domestic divisions in Zambia. Political polarization. Lungu's presidency was marked by controversy, including accusations of authoritarianism and economic mismanagement, which polarized Zambians. Supporters of Lungu and his Patriotic Front (PF) party view the government's intervention as an attack on his legacy, while supporters of President Hichilema and the United Party for National Development (UPND) see it as a necessary defense of national pride. This has reignited tensions between PF and UPND factions, with public discourse as reflected in ex-posts showing strong partisan sentiments. Cultural debates. The government's emphasis on burying Lungu in Zambia aligns with cultural expectations that prominent figures be laid to rest on home soil. However, some Zambians, particularly those sympathetic to the Lungu family, argue that the family's autonomy should be respected, leading to debates about tradition versus personal choice. Public sentiment. Ex-posts indicate a mix of sadness and frustration among Zambians. For example, at Joseph_Kalimbui's post describes the situation as a sad period in the history of our Zambian politics, reflecting a sense of national mourning tainted by political drama. Some Zambians feel the government's legal action is heavy-handed, while others support it as a matter of principle. Divisions in the Zambian diaspora. Diaspora reactions. The Zambian diaspora, particularly in South Africa, is divided along similar lines. Those aligned with the Lungu family may support the burial in Johannesburg, viewing it as a practical or symbolic choice, while others align with the government's call for repatriation, seeing it as a matter of national unity. The visibility of Esther Lungu and family members in Johannesburg, as noted in ex-posts, has heightened diaspora engagement with the issue. International perception. The controversy has damaged Zambia's image abroad, portraying it as a nation unable to resolve internal disputes amicably. The involvement of South African courts has drawn attention from regional media, amplifying perceptions of political dysfunction. Broader social impact. Trust in institutions. The dispute has eroded trust in both the government and the Lungu family. The government's legal approach is seen by some as overreach, while the family's refusal to engage is perceived as defiant or disrespectful to national values. Media and social media role. Ex-posts have fueled public debate, with users like at Crizzledalewis and at SABC News framing the issue as a dramatic showdown. This has amplified divisions, as social media becomes a battleground for competing narratives. The controversy has thus deepened existing political and cultural fault lines in Zambia, while engaging the diaspora in a debate about identity and loyalty, with social media amplifying these divisions. 5. Lungu family goes to court. The Lungu family's decision to engage with the South African legal system marks a critical escalation in the dispute. As respondents in the Zambian government's injunction, the family, represented by lawyer Makibi Zulu, is actively defending its right to bury Edgar Lungu in Johannesburg. Legal representation. Makibi Zulu's role. The inclusion of Makibi Zulu, a prominent Zambian lawyer, suggests the family is mounting a robust legal defense. Zulu's involvement indicates a strategic approach, likely focusing on the family's autonomy and legal rights under South African law. Family involvement. Esther Lungu and her children are named as respondents, reflecting their collective stake in the decision. Their visible presence in Johannesburg, as noted in ex-posts, underscores their commitment to seeing the burial through in South Africa. Legal arguments. While specific court filings are not publicly detailed in the available information, the family's likely arguments include right to privacy and choice. The family may argue that the decision to bury Lungu in South Africa is a private matter, protected under personal and familial rights. This could challenge the Zambian government's authority to dictate burial arrangements. South African jurisdiction. By choosing South Africa, the family may assert that South African law applies, especially if Lungu was legally residing there at the time of his death. The passport allegation, if addressed, could complicate this argument. Practical considerations. The family might highlight logistical reasons, such as existing arrangements arrangements in Johannesburg or Lungu's ties to the city to justify their decision. Court proceedings. The Gauteng High Court's agreement to suspend the burial until July 18, 2025 indicates that the family has agreed to pause proceedings pending a final ruling. This suggests a willingness to engage with the legal process, though it may also reflect a lack of immediate alternatives given the court's authority. The family's legal battle is thus a defense of their autonomy and a challenge to the Zambian government's intervention, with significant implications for the outcome of the dispute. 6. Why the government is involved. The Zambian government's involvement stems from a combination of political, cultural, and legal motivations, reflecting its role as a steward of national interests and its complex relationship with Edgar Lungu's legacy. Political motivations. Control of narrative. Lungu's presidency was divisive, and his death presents an opportunity for the Hichilema administration to shape his legacy through a state funeral. Allowing a burial abroad could cede control of this narrative to the Lungu family and the opposition PF. Demonstrating authority. By challenging the family's decision, the government reinforces its authority over national matters, particularly those involving former heads of state. This is especially significant given the political rivalry between Hichilema and Lungu. Cultural and national considerations. National pride. The government views Lungu's burial in Zambia as a matter of national honor, aligning with cultural expectations that leaders be laid to rest on home soil. Precedent setting. Allowing a former president to be buried abroad could set a precedent that undermines Zambia's sovereignty over its historical figures. Legal and diplomatic strategy. Court action. The government's decision to file an injunction in South Africa reflects a strategic use of legal mechanisms to enforce its demands, leveraging international cooperation to assert its position. Engagement efforts. Hichilema's claim of attempting to engage the family suggests a diplomatic approach, though the resort to legal action indicates a breakdown in these efforts. The government's involvement is thus driven by a desire to uphold national pride, control political narratives, and assert legal authority, with the burial dispute serving as a flashpoint for these objectives. 7. Legal strategies from both sides. Both the Zambian government and the Lungu family have adopted distinct legal strategies to advance their positions in the Gauteng High Court. Zambian government's strategy. Injunction filing. The government's primary strategy was to secure an immediate injunction to halt the burial, which succeeded on June 25, 2025. This bought time to argue for repatriation. National interest argument. The government likely emphasizes Zambia's sovereignty and cultural norms, arguing that a former president's burial abroad undermines national identity. Diplomatic pressure. By engaging South African courts, the government leverages diplomatic relations to ensure compliance, framing the issue as a matter of bilateral cooperation. Passport allegation. If substantiated, the government may use the Zimbabwean passport claim to question the legality of Lungu's status in South Africa, strengthening its case for repatriation. Lungu family's strategy. Autonomy defense. The family, through PFvsUPND, likely argues for their right to make private decisions about Lungu's burial, challenging the government's authority to intervene. South African jurisdiction. The family may assert that South African law governs the burial, especially if Lungu was legally resident there. This could involve presenting evidence of his ties to Johannesburg. Delay and negotiation. By agreeing to the court's suspension, the family may be buying time to negotiate a compromise or prepare a stronger legal case. Both sides are navigating a complex legal landscape, with the government relying on national interest and diplomatic leverage, and the family emphasizing personal rights and jurisdictional arguments. 8. South Africa's position. South Africa's role in the dispute is primarily as a neutral legal and diplomatic arbiter, with the Gauteng High Court serving as the venue for resolving the conflict. Its position is shaped by legal obligations, regional diplomacy, and domestic considerations. Judicial role. Court neutrality. The Gauteng High Court's decision to suspend the burial reflects its commitment to due process, allowing both parties to present their cases. The court's agreement-based ruling suggests a balanced approach, avoiding immediate favoritism. Pending determination. The court's focus is on determining whether Lungu's body should be repatriated, a decision that will hinge on legal arguments, international law, and possibly the passport issue. Diplomatic considerations. SADC relations. As a member of the SADC, South Africa must navigate its role carefully to avoid straining relations with Zambia. Granting the injunction aligns with diplomatic courtesy, but a final ruling will require balancing Zambia's demands with the Lungu family's rights under South African law. Passport allegation. If Lungu used a Zimbabwean passport, South African authorities may need to investigate immigration or hospital records, which could influence the court's decision. Domestic implications. Public perception. The case has drawn attention in South Africa, with media outlets like SABC News covering the drama. South Africans may view the case as a test of their legal system's impartiality in regional disputes. Logistical role. South Africa's hosting of the burial arrangements, including the planned prayer service in Hillgrove, places it at the center of logistical considerations, further entangling it in the dispute. South Africa's position is thus one of legal impartiality and diplomatic caution, with the court serving as the primary mechanism for resolving the conflict while maintaining regional harmony. 9. Public reactions in Zambia and Diaspora. Public reactions to the Lungu burial controversy, as reflected in ex posts and inferred from the context, reveal a spectrum of emotions and perspectives. In Zambia, supporters of the government, many Zambians, particularly UPND supporters, view the government's stance as a defense of national pride. They argue that Lungu, as a former president, belongs in Zambia, and the family's decision is disrespectful. Supporters of the Lungu family, PF supporters, and others sympathetic to the family see the government's intervention as an overreach, accusing Hichilema of politicizing a private matter. This group emphasizes the family's right to choose. General mourning. Beyond politics, there is widespread sadness over Lungu's death, as noted in posts like at Joseph_Kalimbwis, which calls it a sad period. The legal drama has overshadowed national mourning, frustrating many Zambians. In the diaspora, South African Zambians. The Zambian community in South Africa is divided, with some supporting the family's decision due to proximity and others aligning with the government's call for repatriation. The visibility of Esther Lungu in Johannesburg has galvanized diaspora attention. Regional sentiment. The controversy has sparked interest in SADC countries, with some viewing it as a cautionary tale about political rivalries and others sympathizing with the family's plight. Social media, particularly X, has amplified these reactions, with users like at Crizzledalewis framing the issue as a dramatic showdown, further polarizing opinions. 10. What happens next in the court battle? The next steps in the court battle will depend on the Gauteng High Court's proceedings and the broader diplomatic context. Key developments to watch include court proceedings. July 18, 2025 hearing. The court's suspension of the burial until July 18, 2025 sets the stage for a final determination. Both sides will present detailed arguments, with the government pushing for repatriation and the family defending their choice. Evidence and allegations. The passport issue, if pursued, could require additional evidence such as hospital or immigration records. This could delay proceedings if investigations are needed. Possible compromise. The court may encourage mediation, potentially leading to an agreement on a burial location or shared ceremonies in both countries. Diplomatic developments. Zambia-South Africa relations. The outcome will impact bilateral ties, with South Africa needing to balance its legal obligations with regional diplomacy. SADC involvement. If the dispute escalates, SADC could play a mediating role, though this seems unlikely given the legal focus. Public and political fallout. Zambian politics. The case's outcome could influence political dynamics, either strengthening Hichilema's position or galvanizing PF supporters. Public sentiment. A resolution that respects both national pride and family autonomy could ease tensions, while a one-sided ruling may deepen divisions. The court's final ruling will determine whether Lungu is buried in Zambia or South Africa, shaping his legacy and Zambia's political landscape. Conclusion. The Edgar Lungu burial controversy is a multifaceted drama that has captured international attention due to its legal, political, and cultural dimensions. The Lungu family's decision to pursue a burial in South Africa has clashed with the Zambian government's demand for repatriation, leading to a high-stakes court battle in Pretoria. The dispute has divided Zambians at home and abroad, fueled by political rivalries, cultural expectations, and unverified allegations like the Zimbabwean passport claim. South Africa's role as a neutral arbiter underscores its legal and diplomatic significance, while public reactions reflect a nation grappling with grief and division. The court's final ruling, expected after July 18, 2025, will resolve the immediate dispute, but may have lasting implications for Zambia's politics and regional relations. For further details, or to expand on specific aspects, please let me know.